What is going on, YouTube? So today we are going to talk about resistance bands. And there are two types of resistance bands really that you can use to exercise. One, we got these long bands here that that are pretty tough. They're usually my preferred style. And then we also have little the tubing that's a little more common in gyms, and this one in particular is so these are a little bit cheaper as well, and they tend to wear out a little bit more, but these little set here came with like a little door anchor and a little ankle strap, so that's pretty cool. That way you have different ways to exercise. You use different exercises available to you with those, and there's also like little numbers of weight. Now that's the thing about resistance bands though. I don't know how they measure that, but as you pull on a resistance band, it actually gets harder. There's more tension built up. So the strength necessary increases depending on your distance from the anchor point. So I don't know how they got those numbers, but you can change the resistance on a resistance band quite a bit by pulling on it further away. That's one of the biggest differences from a regular weight. Another big difference that you can get from resistance bands, it's easier on the joints. So that's really nice, especially if you're having some joint aches and things like that. Resistance bands can be a good option to use. One of the downsides to it though is that because they have this variable resistance to it, we are not going to have an easier of a time to track our progress. So with standard weights, dumbbells, if you've used 10 pounds, 10 pounds is 10 pounds, and it doesn't really change unless you change the angles, the torque. But with this, it's much harder to know how much resistance you used last time. That being said, I'm going to show you a little upper body workout today with bands only, and covering everything. Upper body in the front, back, arms, shoulders, everything. So let's get right to it. And here's the beginning of our warm-up, starting with some shoulder rotations to get those rotator cuff muscles, and then some rear delt fly variations. Now check this one out. I've seen people do this on videos like ads and stuff like that, where they throw the band behind them and they do something like this. That does nothing. So don't do that. Don't waste your time. It's supposed to be like a chest fly or something. What you want to do instead So once I've anchored my band further behind me, now that gets actually a lot more strength work into it. Otherwise, you're not really stretching the band when you put it behind you. Yeah, I think that's just like a gimmick thing when companies or somebody post videos of themselves doing that for like a warm-up. Don't waste your time. And here's the end of our warm-up with some bicep curls and tricep extensions. We will revisit these two exercises later at the end of our workout with a much thicker band. So up next, I'm going to get into the strength work. So you'll see one set. I'll probably do a little voiceover over each exercise to give you a little bit more explanation. But I'm going to start with some big muscles. That's going to be the lats. And I'm going to use this band I've hooked from a high anchor. I'm going to show you two variations as well in this one in case you do not have a high anchor for the bands. Then I'm going to get some shoulders because these are opposite movements. So I'm going overhead pulling and overhead pushing. I'm just going to do single arm. I feel with bands is a little bit better option. That way you can feel the muscles working a little bit more. Now my preferred setup here is whichever arm is grabbing the band, the same side knee is on the floor, that butt cheek is squeezing hard, so we have a solid, stable position to pull into, so you can really focus on squeezing those back muscles, those lats hard. Now when you're pulling down here, imagine your best to think of the movement as pulling with the shoulder and shoulder blade as you're trying to get them into your back pocket. There is a little bit of a side bend as we do this to maximize the lat contraction, because we really want to feel that muscle working, all those back muscles squeezing, since that is the main purpose of our exercise. Now here's a variation to the same movement if you only have a low anchor that you can use. Here I'm trying to keep my torso as horizontal as possible so that we can focus in that same overhead position and pulling down into that hip or back pocket. So it's essentially the same movement, just different body position. And remember that the band is a variable resistance. So if you do start a little too aggressive, you can always scoot towards the anchor or let go of the band a tiny bit. Or if you need to make it harder, you can always walk back a little bit within that set, which is something you cannot do with regular weights. As we get set up here with our overhead press, make sure that foot that's stepping inside the band is solid on the ground to keep the band secure so it does not slide around. The same side hand has a band between the thumb and the index and just grip from there. Whenever we are doing strict presses, we always want to have a solid foundation with our legs. So that leg that's standing inside the band, that butt cheek is always squeezed hard to make sure nothing else moves in the lower body. Although it's a little challenging to see from a side angle, there is some side bending of the spine, the thoracic spine, the upper back area, as we press. So the arms and the shoulders are moving a little bit like a seesaw. As one side goes up, the other side goes down. I just find that this feels a little bit more natural than trying to stay super robotic with the exercise. Another variation for the overhead press that you can do if you're a little bit limited on the bands that you have, and the band that you're trying to use for your overhead press is too hard to do it standing, you can do this kneeling. So you can just put your knee inside the band or here, and you can still go half kneeling and press there. Now that's going to take a lot of tension out of the band, so if that is the problem with standing, it's too much tension, then just come back kneeling, build your strength up there before you go back up to standing after a handful of weeks. Get one forearm inside the band and hook the band between the thumb and the index finger as you grab. The opposite side leg of that pressing arm is way forward so that you can really put your weight into it and lift the back heel off the ground as much as you can. The back knee is straight and the back butt cheek is squeezed super hard the whole time. Notice the shoulders, chest rotate as we punch forward, so the arms are once again doing a little bit of a seesaw motion. Remember here that little changes in the band tension can make big changes in the strength required to do the press. So either scoot back a little bit to make it easier or scoot forward a little bit to make it harder. Aside working our chest, triceps, and shoulders, there is a lot of stability required through this exercise, so we are getting our core work and shoulder stability work done here. So now we are going to flip over and work on the completely opposite muscles from that press. So now we're getting the upper back muscles. We're still squeezing the lat that we use on our pull down though. And notice whichever arm is pulling here, the opposite side leg is way back with the heel still way off the ground. You'll see it more when we switch sides here, but we're taking a huge step here to get a lot of tension and stability through the legs. As we perform our row, you still want to think about that shoulder blade driving down and back into that back pocket. Notice the hips are steady, the legs are steady, they do not move. And as that side crunches, the non-working side opens up on the side of the torso. This is called coiling core, something termed by Weck method, if you want to check them out, about using your spine as a movement engine instead of just keeping it rigid, because we do want to be able to use our spine in movement and not be like the tin can man. So now that we've gotten our big movements out of the way, now we're gonna get a little isolation. So a little bit more shoulder work, a little bit more arm work, and that's gonna be it for the exercise. So we didn't do two low rep uh, movements here. The bands, like I said before in the beginning, it's hard to really gauge how much intensity you use compared to last time. It's a little harder to gauge your progress there. That way I like to keep 8 to 12 reps or higher on the actual sets. That way you can feel the muscles working a little bit more, get a little bit better gauge of when you're fatiguing, so that you can adjust and push yourself within each set as best as you can. And we're going to go into these isolation exercises at 2 times speed, just because there's not things super special about the technique. Just getting into some shoulder, front, and lateral raises, burning out one at a time before switching back and forth until we cannot do any more. I'm just going about 10 reps max here on each one. Then we're getting into our bicep curls. Just make sure you squeeze those biceps super hard at the top. Don't let the elbows travel back and forth, and just keep constant pace. It's a huge mistake people make is they rest within the set. Then the tricep extensions, think hyperextend the elbows at the bottom position to make those muscles work, really get a pump here. All right, everyone, so that's it for today. Try to get those sets and reps in with the prescribed amounts. Um, Throughout the sets, challenge yourself as much as you can. So if you're barely getting the least amount on those prescribed sets, maybe make it a little bit easier. If you're getting to the high amount pretty easily, make it a little bit harder as necessary. Adjust it. Well, hope you like it. Let me know how it goes when you try it out. Like, subscribe, stay tuned to the workouts. Hit the little notification bell to make sure you get notified when these come out, because we're going to do some lower body, we're going to do some core next with bands.